actually been giving this presentation for years, but through this title I've gotten a bigger platform for it and more opportunities to travel all across the state and speak with schools, civic organizations, all kinds of different people. And I'm super excited to show you guys the same thing today. I don't have one of those little pointer things, so I'll be kind of awkwardly standing back here to change the slides. That is what it is. All right, so for as long as I can remember, I have loved and cared about animals. I was lucky enough to grow up in a home where my mom and my dad supported me, my empathy, my natural desire to take care of creatures. It started out, we would always save barn cats when a farm would close in the middle of the winter and the cats would be freezing. My mom and I would schlep over there with giant boxes and rig traps to get the cats into them, and we would bring them all home and get them spayed and neutered and get them vet care and find them homes, ideally 2 by 2, and usually end up keeping the last odd numbered one. And so I've always been a big animal lover. I was also always that kid that would go outside and find baby animals that needed help. Whether it was worms on the driveway after a rainstorm that I would throw out into the grass, or a baby mouse that I found that needed help. This was the first baby wild bird that I ever rescued. One day I went down to the end of the driveway to get our trash cans after trash day, and one of the lids had been left off, and there was a tiny baby bird in the bottom of the trash can. And I picked it up and I ran home and I was like, Mom, Dad, we have a new pet. Isn't that exciting? Isn't that awesome? And they're like, no, whoa, this is a wild bird. You need a license, you need specialized training, and it's not a pet. The goal with this creature is going to be to take care of it so that it can go back into the wild. So that is how we met Ellen Jarecki and Carol Winfield, who are here. They're two of my mentors who I learned from. Ellen was a rehabber for, I think, 14 years. She still now takes care of mice. And so if you find any mice or rats that need help, she is the specialist with these creatures. But at the time, she was taking care of lots of songbirds as well. So we brought this bird to Ellen, and she taught me what she did to raise it. I probably bugged her every single day, multiple times a day, calling her to check on that bird. And she had a remarkable amount of patience talking through everything with me, explaining what she was doing to take care of it. She let me know when it finally went free. And I knew that I had found my passion. As soon as I learned that wildlife rehab was a thing, I knew that I had found my passion. And it just so happened that my mom had also done this work in college when she was at Cornell University, so she had kind of a background in it as well. But I was, 6 or 7 at the time, so it's not like I could get my wildlife rehab license. You have to be 18. And, I'm pretty sure my parents weren't going to just immediately commit to changing our entire lifestyle and taking on something so big for, what might just be a hobby or a fleeting fancy or something. So what we did is they allowed me to work with Ellen and train with Ellen and gain skills and gain responsibility to see if this was something that I really wanted to do. So we started taking care of baby mice. You don't need a license to take care of baby mice or baby rats. Same with a couple other species like pigeons and house sparrows and starlings. And then you also can foster animals for the Humane Society or domestic animals, obviously, without a license. So this is a great way to train as well. And under Ellen and Carol and a bunch of our other rehabbers' supervision, I started learning how to take care of wild creatures. So this is basically what a wildlife rehabilitator is. Long story short, wildlife rehabbers are licensed by the state, and in the case of migratory birds, by the federal government, to care for orphan and injured wild creatures. And one big difference between wildlife rehab and maybe a humane society or something like that is that with domestic animals, the goal is usually to take them in and give them the care they need and then find them a great home. With wildlife, the goal is always to release them back into the wild whenever possible. So these were some of the little mice that we started taking care of. And then these were two domestic bunnies that actually originally ended up with Ellen. They had been thrown away in a trash can by someone, but a very observant woman had noticed that a bag was rustling around in her dumpster and opened it up and found these two babies still alive. And Ellen talked me through every aspect of raising them, and my parents were kind enough to let me do so, with the express promise that of course we would find them a home and not keep them. Well, they ended up being a foster fail, and we had them for years and years and years. We had them for their whole life, and they were great members of the family. This is why I am only allowed to do wildlife rehab and not domestic animals. So my friends started always wanting to come over to my house because we always had fun animals, whether it was mice or little birds that we were taking care of till they could get to a rehab or something like that. They started learning how to help us build cages, and it was very clear already that kids immediately gravitated towards doing this type of work, and they had that natural sense of wanting to help creatures. And then finally, when I turned 13, my 13th birthday present was that my mom applied for her license, and we got this flight cage for songbirds. It was like a starter flight cage for the songbirds that we would take care of. You can see some of the different caging that you need for different species. This would be great for like baby mice or rats, or like infant squirrels before they need a bigger cage. This is good for like adult opossums, things like that. We have a little songbird cage up there. You can see this pigeon got out and is sitting on the cage. But that was the best present. Literally the only thing that I had wanted for years was for us to get licensed as wildlife rehabbers. So then we started embarking on that journey in a more official sense. Now you can see two different kinds of birds in these pictures. I bet you all know what the one on the left is. It's a hummingbird. Hummingbirds need to be, on my left, on your right, I apologize. But hummingbirds need to be fed about every 15 minutes because their wings beat so many times a minute that they are burning tons and tons and tons of calories. So people who find hummingbirds pretty much need to call a rehabber right away. You can give them sugar water, very short term, that they can suck out of a syringe, but they need to be brought to a rehabber for specialized care. These guys are baby cedar waxwings. I'm sure you guys have seen it. I was actually just talking to a woman in this room who brought me a cedar waxwing last year. But we have lots of these guys, especially as they come back from migration in the spring and as they start to migrate in the fall. One important thing about this photo, do you guys all see the little hole behind this baby bird's tongue right there? So the significance of that is that hole leads right to their airway, to their lungs. So people often think, especially on hot days in the summer, oh, I found a baby bird lying on the hot pavement, it's 90 degrees outside, this bird is visibly dehydrated, it must need water, right? Or juice, you would think. No, you actually do not want to give any kind of liquid to a baby bird in its open beak, because it is actually more likely than not to drown them. So that's one of the saddest calls we get, are people that have the best intentions, that are going out of their way to help these creatures, but end up accidentally killing them because you're not taught that anywhere. So if you find a baby bird, you want to immediately call a wildlife rehabilitator pretty much in every situation, because there's a lot of nuances to every situation. Some people say, oh, if it's a fledgling, which means it's feathered and hopping around, it doesn't need help, just leave it. But I am always afraid to oversimplify anything because every situation's different. And a lot of times it's a fledgling, but it has a gaping wound under its wing. Or it's a fledgling, but it's covered in mites and no parents are around. Or it's a fledgling, but it's obviously starving. So I always say, if you find a baby bird and something feels off, or a baby animal at all, if something feels off, just call a wildlife rehabber and then you can get more info. If you do end up in this situation where you have to take care of a bird for a couple hours, make sure that it's fully warm first. Again, we can teach you how to do this. And then you can always rehydrate a baby bird with little chunks of fruit. That's the best way to do it, like watermelon or grapes or berries, but nothing, no liquid. So that's an important thing. And you never want to feed a cold animal or bird because then they won't be able to digest the food and it can just make things worse. These are baby bunnies. These guys are often brought to us if someone's mowing the lawn and they end up accidentally disturbing the nest, doing yard work, or by people's cats and dogs. So we always specifically encourage people to keep their cats inside. I have 4 rescue cats personally. Like I said, I grew up always with tons of cats and with dogs. But we have always kept our cats inside because that is the #1 call that we get all year long is about birds and animals mangled by people's cats. So if you keep your cats in or you get a catio, build them a catio or something like that, or take them out on a harness and leash even, there's lots of great options and lots of great ways to enrich your cat's lives without letting them be outside killing the wildlife. This was the bunny on your right was actually brought in by someone's cat and had a big wound. And I think Ellen actually made this. It involved skin glue and a bandage, and this bunny was able to survive. Also, any animal that's caught by a cat needs a week of antibiotics, or it will probably just die of an infection anyway. So if your cat does bring in something and it seems okay, you still want to get it to a rehabber because it still needs that medicine. These are baby squirrels. Another situation that we often find ourselves in is someone calling because they have accidentally orphaned babies by either killing the parents or relocating the parents during baby season. We get this a ton with squirrels, we get it with groundhogs, we get it with lots of different creatures. And our wonderful colleagues who do rabies vector species like raccoons and skunks, that happens a lot, and foxes, that happens a lot with them as well. So there's actually a lot of really easy solutions if you have a creature in your house or in your crawl space or anywhere that you don't want. One of our auction items over there, and there's actually a lot of info from them as well, is a gift certificate to Heart Wildlife Removal. This is a humane wildlife eviction company run by fellow rehabber Joanne Nichols. And what they do, think about them as an exterminator, but 100% humane. So they're not going to come in and kill anything. They're going to come in and help you find humane solutions to whatever the problem is. One of the easiest, simplest solutions I learned from her for something like this squirrel problem is if you have squirrels in your attic, if you have skunks in a crawl space, find a radio or a speaker and put on whatever the loudest, most obnoxious type of music you can think of, whatever you think your grandparents would hate the most. Just play that super loud in that space, and chances are whatever the creatures are will take their babies and they will leave that space. It doesn't always work with mice and rats. It's worth a try. There's other humane solutions for them. There's these mouse repellent pouches that are made with essential oils that actually smell great to people but smell terrible to mice. I've had really good luck with those. One of my friends has a super nice Corvette that she overwinters in her garage, and she had a mouse problem in her Corvette, and she's a super compassionate person, so she was catching every single mouse in the tiny have-a-heart traps and releasing them a mile away, but she just kept getting more and more mice. And so I got her some of those pouches, and she put one in the engine block, one in the front, one in the back, and one in the trunk, and she never had another issue with mice in her engine. So there's usually humane solutions to everything. The problem is that people tend to just jump to, this is an inconvenience to me, let's kill it, and then not think about the side effects of that. So there's almost always a better way. I'm happy to help you brainstorm a better way. Heart is happy to. Most other rehabbers are happy to. So there's lots of resources out there if you just look for them. These guys, you might have noticed my mom standing over there. That is her in this picture. This is a raven. These guys came in when they were basically just hatched out of their eggs. The parents had made a nest above a horse barn, and they were flying in and scaring the horses every time, which for a commercial horse barn is obviously not ideal. So the people didn't realize that the eggs had already hatched. They knocked down the nest, which actually is illegal. It is illegal to disturb an active bird's nest. But they didn't know this at the time. But thankfully, to their credit, they were humane enough that once they realized there were babies that were disturbed, they took the time to gather them up and call us. Ravens, as well as hawks and owls and some of the bigger birds, can do this thing that's called imprinting. Ducks and geese can also do this. And what it means is that in the first couple weeks of these birds' lives, there is a moment in which whatever they're looking at, they think they are. So, and no one knows exactly what that moment is. So it's different than just being tamed. They actually bind to that identity. So for these baby ravens, for instance, we had to wear a mask, and then Ellen actually, because she's super crafty, made us a raven puppet. And so we would hide behind the mask or a blanket or something, I don't totally remember, and then use the raven puppet to feed the baby ravens for the first couple weeks of their lives to make sure that at no point they thought they were a human. So never a dull moment. There's always adventures depending on what new species and case you get. But these guys grew up great. They're fully wild, but they're intelligent enough that they know my mom as their mom. So they're tame with her. We have ravens, we have owls, lots of birds that will come back for years after to visit her, but they're fully wild. They have wild families. They're not tame with any other humans. They're just intelligent enough to know the person that raised them. These are baby chipmunks, as you all can guess. Baby chipmunks actually have stripes on their skin before they even have fur. So that's a fun little chipmunk fact. Anybody have any guesses what this is? You can just shout it out. No one ever knows. No one ever gets this. Pigeon. Okay, that was record time. No one ever gets that one. Yes, these are baby pigeons. Pigeons are a species that gets a bad rap, but they are one of my favorites actually. They're extremely loyal. They mate for life. They have very strong bonds with their flock. Multiple pigeons were actually war heroes in World War I and World War II. And they're just great birds. They actually are a partially domestic, partially wild species, so they're one of the few species that if we are to get one in that has a badly broken wing and it's not releasable, it can actually be kept as a pet in some cases and can live a great life. So that is unique to pigeons. They're awesome. And they're actually fed in a very unique way. Most baby birds need to be fed about every 20 to 40 minutes all day long from dawn till dusk, whereas mammals need to be fed generally every 2 to 4 hours, or rabbits, twice a day, all around the clock, including at night. But pigeons only need to be fed a few times a day because their parents have a very unique way of feeding them, which is they eat their food, partially digest it, and then throw it up into their babies' mouths. So I'm glad I'm not a baby pigeon. I don't know about you. But we obviously simulate this by using parrot formula, but it works out. This is an adult pigeon. One of the things about this type of work is you see a lot of the best and the worst of people, and this case was a perfect example. So this was some number of years ago now, and it was about 10 o'clock at night, and I was answering the phone. It was when I still lived at home with my mom and dad, and I answered the phone, and it was a group of teenagers up in the Northeast Kingdom, and they said they were panicked. They were like, we have a pigeon, someone shot it with a BB gun, and we rescued it, but it's bleeding all over the place. Can we bring it over? And I was like, yeah, absolutely. We're 2 hours away, but by all means, please do. We'll wait up for you. And so these 4 teenagers dedicated their Saturday night to driving 2 hours each way to bring us a pigeon. One was driving, one was holding pressure on the wound, and then 2 were moral support in the back. And they were so deeply invested in this pigeon. And my mom and I stayed up for hours trying to get the right splint because the wing was absolutely shattered, and no vets were obviously open because it was 10 o'clock, or by that point it was midnight on a Sunday morning. And we managed to get a splint that stabilized the wing. It took a couple years actually for this bird to fully heal to the point where it could fly and go free, but this bird actually did end up being releasable. And it was just a perfect story and like a perfect example of how you had someone out there shooting pigeons with BB guns for no reason other than just to cause suffering. And then you have these people step in and save their lives or save its life, and did a wonderful job, dedicated their time, energy, gas money to bringing this bird to us so that it could have a new chance at life. And that's one of my favorite parts of this work is you meet people. I mean, look how full this room is. This is a perfect example. There are so many people out there that care about life and that have empathy. From Ellen, who raises tiny baby mice, to the people that drive the volunteer transport network that we've organized of people who will drive those tiny baby mice from 4 hours away to her so that they can be raised. And these are creatures that most people just don't even think of as a life. So there are so many people out there with empathy. There are so many people out there with big hearts who want to help creatures. And that's one of my favorite parts of being a part of this community and doing this work is you meet those people every day. And you give them a place to take these animals. Because otherwise, without me and my mom and our fellow rehabbers, there wouldn't be anywhere to bring these creatures that need help. And because of all of you guys, there is. So I just want to say thank you so much to everyone who has that heart for animals, from our organizations who are out there trying to make the laws better for animals, like Protect Our Wildlife, to rehabbers who take care of individual creatures every day, to the transporters who, spend their time, energy, gas money going all over the state to bring the animals to the help they need, to the compassionate finders, to game wardens and law enforcement, veterinarians. There's so many people that we work with who do an amazing job and play an integral role in making Vermont a compassionate place for our wildlife. So there's a lot of work still to be done, as many of you guys know. But each and every one of you can make a difference. And now that you know wildlife rehabbers are a thing, you can find us anytime by looking up Licensed Wildlife Rehabbers Vermont. There's a list on the Fish and Wildlife website. So anyone who finds anything that they even think might need help, please just give us a call. Thank you all so much for being here.
Hi guys, good afternoon. My name's Dale, and I'm married to Juliana, Sophia's mom. And my goal today, they asked me if I would speak, and I'm going to try. So it's very interesting. I just retired. I'm a game warden, veteran game warden, 29 years. And my strengths really, for all my adult life, I've pretty much been in uniform. And this is a very unique, slightly scary experience for me to not be up here in a bulletproof vest with a gun up and talking to a very big crowd. So thank you guys for coming. We are here to honor these two beautiful ladies, the work they do for wildlife. And as was just pointed out to me, make sure that you guys hit that silent auctions. There are some amazing things up there. That trip to Eleuthero in the Bahamas, I mean, I'm tempted to sign my next pension check for that one. All the money truly does go to saving and rescuing wildlife. And if I had to guess, everybody in this room probably loves wildlife. So it's a very worthy cause. One of the things that I have taught the wardens over the years is that I'll give you a little bit of background on myself in just a second, but I'm a firearms instructor and use of force instructor. I've been for many years, and that's kind of my specialty and expertise. And in firearms shooting and cops and whatnot, if they get in a gunfight, we try to train the wardens to be prepared for that kind of thing. And as you can imagine, there's an immense amount of stress and pressure. if you're involved in a confrontation like that. And this may come as a surprise to many of you. It did to me. I went to a school in California where they taught us, you can run your officers up and down the range, have them push up, scream at them, and then have them shoot and make sure they shoot well under pressure. But to really give them that stress, a more appropriate and more effective way to do it is to challenge their ego. And how do you challenge a person's ego, male or female? You can never duplicate a gunfight, I would imagine. But to get close to that stress is public speaking. And even worse, do it in front of your peers and loved ones. Then even worse, do it in front of your bosses. You combine them all and you've got a tremendous amount of stress. And we used to do that to our guys on the range just to elevate that level of stress and get them used to shooting that way. So, with that said, brief history on me. I grew up in Randolph, Vermont. My parents met down in Westminster West. That's where I was born. They were teachers at the Austin School for the Deaf. They remained teachers throughout their careers. So I grew up as a teacher's kid in Randolph. At an early age, I was out hunting with my father, and this man mysteriously appeared from behind a tree. It was a game warden. And it had such an impact on me. It probably, I can't remember this, but had a very big impact on my father. He was probably nervous, anxious, as a lot of people are, especially when game wardens just appear out of the woods. But I fixated on that, and I knew that's what I wanted to be. I was probably like 9 or 10 at the time. Went to high school in Randolph, graduated in 1991, and then went and in 5 years I got a 4-year degree out of the University of Maine, and tested 5 times in different states to become a game warden. It was very, very competitive at that time. It's not so much now. So they hired, I think it was 5 of us out of just over 1,000, probably 1,100 candidates. That was 29 years ago, in 1996. As a game warden, I've learned a ton. And one of the things that has really struck me, especially in the last few years, is how I've changed and grown, and how much love I have for not only wildlife but life, period. And my experience as a game warden, early on in my career, I was more callous, and we would get calls, and we'd label them nuisance calls or injured animal calls or things like that. And the typical response from the game warden would be to go and kill it, or to tell the person there's nothing we can do. But with wildlife rehabilitation, wildlife rescue, there are things we can do. And one of the things that the girls have taught me, and what I've really come to appreciate, is that people really love that, and we should encourage that. We should embrace it and validate it, because let's be honest, there's simply not enough love in this world today. Love for fellow human beings, love for wildlife, for everything living, love for our landscape and the planet. So when somebody sees an injured animal that's suffering, whether it be a baby or an adult, it's really important, I feel, in my experience, to honor that and do the best we can within the limits of the law to try to save that animal. And not every animal can be saved. Sometimes they got to be euthanized. And you do that with respect. And you also have to really respect the people that care enough to call. And, you know, I didn't expect or predict that I would fall in love with an area wildlife rehabilitator.
He often said I should have gotten a prenup.
But I'm grateful. I think it's important to remember that, you know, people can change, people can learn, and I have. And I want to share with you some of my experiences and how I've learned. You know, there's such disconnect among people today between other humans, but also disconnected from our world, our planet, and the animals within it. And there's also a lot of arrogance and entitlement. And, you know, when you have a home and a property and an animal.
Up the volume just a little, because they don't want to miss a word.
Sure.
Thank you.
So it's a very common thing. And remember, I'm no longer a game warden, so everything that I'm saying is my opinion and in my experience. I do not represent the Fish and Wildlife Department any longer. When people call with complaints, and it happens a lot, whether it's a bear getting into bird feeders, birds making a nest in the soffits of their home, bats, there's always this, how do I get it gone? What can I do? And then some people just want it killed. Some people think it's the game warden's job to go and remove them or destroy them. And so much of my energy these last few years, I would give to these people, educating them and trying to convince them and talk to them about, you know, what we need to be doing. And a better way to look at this is coexistence. They were here first, and you're living in the bear's backyard as much as he or she's in your backyard. So a better way is to live together and find out a way how to do that. There are times where that is impossible. And there are times, unfortunately, with human and animal conflicts when it ends badly for the animals. But the beginning, the foundation needs to be, what can we do? What can we look at first? And, you know, step back a little bit from that sense of entitlement that anything's on your property or harming your property. And the truth of the matter is, too, when you figure out how to coexist, it's actually a much better and longer lasting solution. With bears, for example, people are lazy often. They don't want to clean up their trash. Well, that's just a recipe for disaster, right? Whether it's the neighborhood dogs or bear or raccoons or whatever. So be good stewards was one of the messages that I was constantly saying too. I also learned, and I think this happens as we age too, that, you know, if you take some time and spend some time with these animals, we have a very unique opportunity as licensed rehabbers to actually be around these wildlife. And you actually see that they're really cool and they have personalities of their own. A lot of times we forget about that and we treat them as objects. Another aspect of this, and something that I'm still learning, is that in the human world, there are extremes on both sides for sure, but there are very kind, tender, altruistic people out there that are physically hurt when animals are hurt. And a lot of the population doesn't understand that or see that. And it's hard to understand if you don't have that inherent love for life or respect for life. And I've seen it over and over again with the people that come, the people that the ladies interact with. While I feel differently, we all feel our own way, but when you have people that care, and I'm guessing that most everybody in this room does, care enough to first ask the question and then try to save an animal, honor that, number one, and then do what you can, not only to help the animal, but them as well. And the amount of gratitude that I see coming down our driveway and leaving after they get to drop off an animal that otherwise would have died or suffered or been killed. It's profound. There is not a lot of effort through the Fish and Wildlife Department, it looks like, to address that issue. And I've been asked about this, and I'll speak about it briefly, but when I look at the history of the Fish and Wildlife Department, originally, and game wardens, bear in mind, were cops. And in my opinion, probably the best, highest trained cops in the state. Community police officers carrying huge districts. My district was 12 towns at one time, over 400 square miles. And so it's very challenging to give your energy to these the folks that need it, or in a lot of cases educating people about coexistence and with animals. And there's also a lot of frustration, probably from some of you in this room, when that love and desire to care about wildlife and saving wildlife doesn't seem to be met. And I've thought a lot about this, and I feel that it's an old system. It is changing, but very slowly. Originally, the Fish and Wildlife Department was funded it was over 80%. I want to say 87% only by hunting, fishing, trapping, licensed sales. So by that very nature, that organization is going to serve that population because money talks. That's what it is. And so there was not a lot of education, not a lot of effort and energy placed on wildlife rescues. More about enforcement and how to keep hunting, trapping, and fishing safeguarded. There's no reason that both can't happen. And it starts at the top. And I can tell you from personal experience, the amount of effort and energy it takes to talk somebody off the edge that wants to kill this animal in their yard, whether it's a deer that's eating their shrubs, or the rabbit that got in the garden, or the bear that hauled down their bird feeder. It takes a lot of effort and energy to convince people to coexist sometimes. But it is worth it, in my opinion. And it needs to be trained and respected, and then also rewarded. And if wardens, for example, are stretched thin, priorities are on other things, and your job quality is rewarded in other directions, that's what happens. And I recognize that. And I would not have recognized that if it hadn't been for my experience. And I brought that to some of my peers and my coworkers, and I taught other younger wardens on better ways to handle these things, because what a cool thing to be able to say, hey, I can't help you with this, but I know somebody that can. Instead of let nature take its course, which is kind of a misnomer too, because almost every injured wildlife, not all the time, but involves some kind of human interaction. So I think, it warms my heart, because you guys, you're a bunch of empaths and you care. And I've never known anybody more altruistic than these guys. It's pretty crazy, and I can't match that either. And I consider myself an empath and a loving man. It's something that we need more of. So kudos to you guys. Kudos for caring. To you ladies. Hats off to you guys. I had intended to give you a little bit of war stories, but I don't think I'm gonna. My wife loves to make this comment. Have you guys seen the Ken and Barbie movie? And the part where Ryan Gosling says, "And now I'm going to play my guitar at you." So I don't want to be that guy.
Thanks for coming on such a snowy day.
I know, right?
It is April. After that introduction, I guess I don't need I can jump right into the commercial. We're based in Shelburne Farms, and if you make a trip there during the summer, your chances are pretty good that you can meet some of our wild ambassadors. We do regular Raptors in residence at the farm throughout the season, so as well as programs for events like this, school programs, but our main focus, as our sign says, is spreading the word about the importance of wildlife and particularly birds of prey. So I brought two of our wild ambassadors today. So I know this is a kind of a big crowd to get everybody to get a good look at them. I can possibly make my way around the room here, so we'll try that and see how it works out. But feel free to ask questions. I'll try to answer as best I can. But one thing to keep in mind is the birds on hand are wild birds for all intents and purposes, even though we've had them for quite a while, and they'll react just like a wild bird. So sudden movements, loud noises, things like that will startle them. I know I do lots of programs with, preschool, kindergarten, whatever, and these guys have seen a lot of things, so they're used to it, but they're still wild at heart. So without further ado, let's see, who shall we start with? You're so quiet. Dramatic entrance. There we go. So everyone should know, try to stay over something washable here. Just like us when you first wake up. All right. So this is our largest breeding owl in Vermont. They are the gray horned owl. And this is actually a male, so he's on the small side. But typical size male gray horned owl. And he came to us 7 years ago, and he was in pretty bad shape due to badly infected feet. And birds can't talk, obviously. Well, most birds can't, to tell us their story. So we have to, a lot of times, figure out things like that. And 9 times out of 10, we can guess hit by car as the cause of injury, and we'd be right. But in his case, he was found at the lumber yard in Bristol, sitting on top of a big pile of sawdust. And everybody thought that was pretty cool. You see a great horned owl, and it stayed there, and it stayed there. And the next day, it was still there. And the following day, it was still there. So they figured something was up. And indeed, he was too weak to fly, starving to death. And upon closer examination, we found that he is missing some very important tools. Birds of prey rely on sharp beak, sharp talons, the knives and forks, so to speak. And he's missing the hallux on his foot, which is equivalent to our thumb. So if you can't grab things, and if the things you're grabbing are your food, you're in rough shape. Besides the fact that his feet were badly infected from wounds on both feet. So the brain starts to turn over different scenarios, and the best I can come up with is great horned owls, when we encounter them, typically have that faint odor of skunk.
Yeah.
So we figured, A, he was a juvenile, a hatchier bird, learning how to hunt. Maybe he grabbed the skunk and it was not happy and it fought back. So thus the loss of feet, or toes, I should say. But that's the story we're sticking with. But to give you an idea, this bird now weighs 1,600 grams, give or take. When we got him, when we admitted him, he weighed about 600, maybe a little less, 595 grams. That gives you some idea the shape he was in. Typical crow weighs maybe 450, so a little more than a crow. But as you can see, he's pretty fat now, pretty happy. But if he were to be released now, although he can fly, without those tools and a full set of equipment, he'd probably end up, especially this winter, probably end up in the same situation. So these guys are pretty resourceful. We can find great horned owls throughout North America. We can find them in the desert Southwest. We can find them way up into northern parts of Canada. East Coast, West Coast, so they're pretty adaptable. You can find them in a large city. Of course, there's plenty of rodents. But rural Vermont is an ideal place for great horned owls, as long as they have places to make homes, dead trees. They prefer cavities. They will utilize other birds' nests. I've seen them nesting in a heron nest, but they are primarily, or they prefer cavities. So it's important that we leave dead trees in our forests. They may be ugly to some people, but for birds and things birds like to eat, they provide homes and sources of food for all kinds of wildlife, so very important. And a lot of times when I do programs, I'm wondering about what I'm going to speak about and talk about. And as I'm coming in the door to this facility, what's the first thing I notice? I don't know if anybody else knows.
The black box.
The black box, the dreaded black box. It's becoming ubiquitous. Rodenticide. You go to your local supermarket, you'll see those black boxes. You go to any municipal building, you see black boxes. Apartment buildings, black boxes. Those black boxes poison rodents and everything that eats rodents, including great horned owls, foxes, coyotes, right on down the line. So these guys don't have it as easy as you might think when it comes to habitat that's loaded with good things to eat. Those good things to eat might be killing them. So something to keep in mind. I know our legislature has been trying not to veer off into the political realm, but every year it seems to come up and every year it seems to die. So the thing is to write letters, keep pressure on your local legislator.
And call.
Call, yeah, write letters, grab them by the collar. But it's important. It's not only impacting this guy, well, not him. His mice are nice and clean, but his wild living counterparts are having a tough time with it. Great horned owls, we think today is, we think today might be a cool and nasty day, but great horned owls have been taking care of chicks already. So these are the earliest of our breeding birds in Vermont. So I know at my house, right after the holidays, Christmas time, at night I hear that deep, booming, bassy, who's awake? Me too. 5 notes. Who's awake? Me too. They start to advertise for mates, defend territories, and on those cold, crisp winter nights, you go out on a nice moonlit night and walk around the woods, you'll hear that. So these guys are thinking about starting families. So probably end of January, beginning of February, they've got a mate. And mid-February, they're probably sitting on eggs. So very hardy, very early breeders. Most of our owls are, but this guy takes the prize for the earliest. And it may seem counterintuitive, right? You're trying to hatch an egg. What do you have to do? Keep it warm, right? But there is a strategy. So these guys are producing maybe two youngsters, possibly 3. And by the time they're starting to fledge and learning how to hunt, the prey species are just beginning to have their young, and they're starting to venture out, and they're very vulnerable. So it's a smorgasbord for great horned owls, baby skunks, cottontails. Sorry, mammal rehabbers. all the food that they would like to
Do
eat.
they do cats? Hope not. Just curious.
If it's a small black and white cat, that's probably not a good thing. But
She's staying in the house.
there you go. That's a better thing anyway, because cats really shouldn't be
She
out
needs to be lazy.
and about.
She needs to stay.
But cats and small dogs, we hear the stories. But, eagles might be more prone to taking your dog
Oh.
or cat. I know in 2004, 5, 6, we did an eagle project here in Addison where we got young eagles and hacked them from Dead Creek. And I had the privilege of going down to Maryland to get the first batch of chicks, and we talked about the eagle nest where they took the chicks from, and the Fish and Wildlife guy related stories of finding collars in the nest. But as far as great horned owls, your pets are probably safe. I'll make a circle around, give everybody a chance to see them. But
Do you name your own?
do I name my owls? Yes, of course. And if you go to any, we won't mention any names, but any wildlife organization or bird center may tell you that they don't name, they do. He's not a number, or, especially if you have more than one.
Yeah.
You know, I can tell them, but yeah. His name is Muir. M-U-I-R.
How long did they live?
We had another great horned owl, a female, that we got as an adult, and she lived 25 years. There was a great horned owl at the Science Museum in Boston that was 50. Spooky, yeah. 50. But in captivity, your meals show up. You're not worried about predators, getting hit by cars, being poisoned by rodenticide. So the capacity to live that long is there, but in the wild, probably not likely. From banding data, the last I checked on great horned owls, it was in the high 20s, I think. Birds that they banded as youngsters and later recovered the band. You can go online. Well, at least the Fish and Wildlife Service, I think they were going to do away with the banding data, as well as everything else they've done. But again, I don't want to get political, but you can, or you could go on their website, and all the records for banding by species is available. So you can check out longevity for banded birds. That's not a very small portion of the birds that are out there living, but it gives you a good idea. Yeah,
Is he nervous? Like, is he
he's hot.
hot? So they don't.
And, well, nervous too, yeah. Lots of strange faces, but they don't sweat, so it even has a fancy name. It's called gular fluttering. So, like a little heat exchange, there's blood vessels, and then air going by gets rid of heat. So, hot breath you can feel. Less slobber than your dog, though. And as far as his age, we just guessed that he was hatched the year that he was hatched. He may be okay. But they can, in captivity, you can live quite a while. If you think about parrots, they have, you know, senior citizen parrots. All right, I'm gonna. Nobody move. You're gonna be surrounded here, bud. Just remember, they poop straight down. You have a hawk, it goes back. Owls are gravity. I forgot some of my equipment, so I'm gonna have to. Don't try this at home. Usually I forgot my lightweight gloves.
Somebody might have a pair if you want.
Nothing will happen. This is not the smallest owl species we have, but the next to the smallest. This is that bird. Eastern screech owl. More specifically, gray phase or gray morph. Pretty common. Although we don't see them very much, they're pretty common. This particular owl came from Heinsberg, and he was hit by car, HBC. And although he can fly, both of his eyes were injured. And he's got them closed now, so he's probably wishing he were asleep. These guys are strictly nocturnal. You won't see them sitting out on a branch in the daylight. Very few exceptions. When the youngsters first fled, you may catch them out, but they're going to stay hidden in a nest cavity or up against the bark of a tree, being invisible during the day. Because, like we were saying, owls eat owls. Crows would eat this owl. Raven would eat this owl. So he's got lots of predators.
Does he relate to you any differently than the other owls?
None of them are pets. They're all wild. So he's not going to be looking for scratches. Like I said, I'm safe perch, so he's not trying to. He doesn't have a death grip on my finger, luckily. But a wild bird for all intents and purposes. Screech owls are year-round residents in Vermont, so this winter was probably a little harder than has been in the past few winters to make a living. They're thinking about breeding. They're a little later than the great horned owls. We usually hear them. We do an owl prowl on Shelburne Farms mid-March, and we go out and play different calls and see who's out there. Almost always we hear or get responses from screech owls, but they're fun. The name screech owl is misleading. They don't screech. They make a little whinny sound. So if you're out walking in the woods and you hear horses, could be screech owl. And they also make a little trill that sounds like.
He's ignoring it.
He's not impressed. Kind of sounds like maybe a tree frog sometimes, but definitely not screeching. So, but they're fun to listen to or listen for when you go out. And like I said, we almost always hear them. They like mixed forest for a habitat, but they can also be found, you know, I'm sure in a park or something in a city, they could find places to nest. So pretty widespread on the East Coast. So you can find them Florida, Virginia. You won't find them super high altitudes like in the Rockies. And then you get to the West Coast and there's a western screech owl. This is in the middle. There's some hybridization screech owl.
So where do they hunt primarily when the snow is so deep?
Unfortunately, they hunt places where there's less snow, which means roads. That's probably not a good thing. Or they'll find, you know, like if you have a farm, places where the, you know, pasture, if you have animals, sometimes they'll go in barns, buildings. I've had multiple calls over the years for screech owls magically appearing inside people's houses. So they find their way in. They're cavity nesters. So down the chimney, important to put caps on your chimneys, or plug up dryer vents and things like that. Yeah, and it's a mystery a lot of times. Had an insurance office in Essex Junction. This guy called me and said, "Oh, I found this owl in my office." Came in on a Monday morning and things were tipped over and there was poop around and it was a screech owl. And we looked and looked and looked and we could not find any openings or whatever. Obviously, it was lots of oak trees around, big oak trees, so they probably somewhere, cavity somewhere nearby. Somehow the owl found its way inside. Down the chimney is a common. Barred owls, screech owls, wood ducks.
In that case, you remove the owl, or you just leave a window open?
Oh no, because we don't, well, in that case we knew it wasn't in there a long time. But a lot of times people find, you know, an owl in their wood stove. Came in, you know, it's like you get the bird and it's emaciated and it's inhaled, you know, dust. But I actually had a screech owl in a fireplace. They had an insert in the old fireplace, and the screech owl was between the insert and and there was a fire in the insert.
How did you get it out?
There was a little opening, and I was able to reach behind there. Yeah, it's very common. Barred owls are another one. They'll go down. So these guys are eating mammals, smaller mammals than great horned owls, mice, voles, some amphibians, birds, flying insects. So wintertime in Vermont, most of that, amphibians and flying insects definitely come off the list. So they rely on birds and mammals. He's invisible. Oh, he's got one eye open.
Craig, how does the gray and the red morph work? Like,
In Vermont, we primarily see gray, but as you move south, more red, like Virginia's, Florida, the red is more common. It may have something to do with habitat,
but they can mate with each other.
They can. There's a little hybrid. I've seen some that are kind of, they have a little brownish mixed in. Yeah.
Is he full grown?
That's it. Big as they get. How what? How old? We had a red morph that we had for 19 years, and she came to us as an adult. She passed away year before last. We had her 19 years. She might have been, 4 or 5 years old, or.
And what's the name of your street child?
Ansel.
I'm reading a book with him.
Ansel Adams. I think from banding data, as I recall, 16 maybe. You'd have to look. I should look and see if that website.